Hi everyone, my name is Peter Bernetsky. I'm a seminarian studying for the Archdiocese of Hartford, Connecticut, and this is my vocation story. It all started when I was very young. I've wanted to be a Roman Catholic priest since as far back as I can remember. I was the middle child of 6 kids in a Catholic homeschool family, and for some of you who know, pursuing a vocation to the priesthood in one of these kinds of families just seems like a natural next step, like a lawyer's son becoming a lawyer or Catholic people being more Catholic later on. Anyways, my mom worked in a kitchen at a Catholic retreat center in Maryland. We were living there at the time, so while she was busy with all the salmon and the rice and things, I got to meet a lot of priests, and they helped me to see how, despite the tremendous sacrifices priests are called to make. I mean, think about it. Giving up a wife and giving up kids and grandkids and all that good stuff. I saw that priests, despite all that, could still be very happy. And that's the kind of happiness I wanted. A holy happiness. A happiness giving one's life to God. Being homeschooled, I didn't have a lot of friends outside my family, I admit. So I was very fortunate that all of my brothers and sisters got along pretty well. I mean, we had our rough spots, but for the most part, we all got along and didn't argue. We weren't that competitive. We got along. Mainly, for the most part. Anyways, my parents offered to my siblings and to me a wonderful example of a vocation, the married vocation. They were always supportive of me and my vocation and made sure I knew that they just wanted me to be happy, whether that was as God's priest or not. When he was 11 years old, my oldest brother Andrew left home to join the religious order called the Legion of Christ. This had a big impact on me, and there were several reasons why it did. But one of the main reasons that it had an impact on me was because I realized at the age of 7 that if God could work in the life of my 11-year-old brother, was he working in mine? God wasn't asking me about later. He was asking me about now. How was I going to give my life to him now, and what would that look like in the future? At that moment, for me, the priesthood became my one and only option. Everything else fell to the wayside. When I entered my high school years, still homeschooled, I recognized that I wanted to be a priest, but I didn't know exactly why. Then, per my mother's request, I got a job working at Dunkin' Donuts, which I held proudly my entire senior year of high school. It was during this time that I began to discover the why. Because I was the nice Catholic homeschool boy, people would come to me with all sorts of questions, wanting to know the truth. I realized that people are starving for truth, and that God was calling me to give them the truth, His truth. This helped to clarify my calling, but, come on, there are a lot of things that a senior in high school wants to be. It sounds childish, but I did at one point want to be an astronaut, until I found out exactly how much math was involved. Then I considered being a teacher. I love history and I love languages, and I also, for a while, wanted to be an archaeologist or a hepatologist. Anyways, I even wanted to be a dentist for about 8 minutes until I realized that it required my inserting my fingers into somebody else's mouth. However, the time for procrastination was over, and when God wants you, He gets you. It was time for me to enter seminary. After I graduated high school, I applied to the Archdiocese of Hartford in Connecticut, where we had moved, and in August of 2012, my parents and I drove down to St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Pennsylvania. The first thing I wanted to do when I got to seminary was leave seminary. Keep in mind that this was just a kid who had never been away from his family for more than a weekend. I was 17, and it was all an adjustment. The schedule, the classroom learning, the food, and the people. However, my professors were excellent, and I developed a deep love for learning and the subject I was studying, philosophy. It took me a while to break out of my shell, but once I did, seminary changed for me. I met my very best friend, Kevin. I began to get to know my classmates, and they became like my brothers, and still are. I met people from China and from Japan, but most of all, I realized the why of my vocation. I found out through prayer and interactions with other people that my reason for being there was not so much a why as it is a who. I realized that I was in seminary simply for the love of God. After graduating from the college seminary in Philadelphia, I was chosen by my archbishop to go to Rome, Italy, to continue my studies for the priesthood. Little old me. I mean, I'm not that little. I'm 6'2", and 250-something pounds, but hey, I didn't think that was coming. Anyways, that God has led me here so far is truly a miracle. Of course, I'll miss all my family and friends as I continue my study abroad, but being united in faith and through prayer is a closer bond than we realize. It was the love of God that drove me to seminary. It was the love of God that kept me in seminary, and it is the love of God that still sends me out to seek His will. Ultimately, I'm not studying to be a priest for me. I'm doing it all for Him, and so that through me, His truth may touch the lives of all people. Am I a priest? No. Will I become a priest? I don't know. What I do know is that if we love God with our whole hearts and follow His will, we can and will be happy. For me, this means being a priest. Is God calling you? What does this plan look like for you? Ask Him, and you may be surprised to find out that your drawing looks a bit like mine.